Pleasure, Gaurav. Thank you so much for having me. I always look forward to this opportunity, as much a learning opportunity as sharing openly from the heart whatever our journey has been together as individuals and our collective learning as mankind, right? And we grow with each other, we learn with each other. So fantastic being here. A great privilege. Thank you.
Shukran. When you meet people, there are common threads that run in your life. And one such is, I think, Anupam's ability to surrender to the universal powers. You may call it God, you may call it Baba. That's how he defines it. You may call it the universe. I think Anupam's ability to surrender to what is something which is worth noticing and appreciating and to learn from. And today we are going to dwell deeper into acceptance of life situations, be it failure, be it grief, or be it hurt, be it fear, be it guilt, or be it the going through the a sense of regret that we hold for ourselves. Now, before we jump into that, we are going to dwell deeper into a few questions around why is acceptance of life situations important? How to accept situations when the going gets tough, how to handle situations where there's a lot of grief involved there, and what is the true essence of life. Now, we'll try and maneuver this conversation from the practical application to share few of the life instances that Anupam has gone through. Before we dwell deeper into that, let me just check with Anupam. Anupam, uh, what is acceptance and what do you think? Why is that important to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. This single word acceptance gave me an opportunity to understand the immense impact and potential the word has. It's linked to surrender. It's linked to some of the stuff you already spoke. So to me, acceptance is an acknowledgement that something has happened, something has occurred, and it cannot be changed, right? So some of us may feel when you hear this that it's a very fatalistic, very defeatist definition. It's happened, cannot be changed. So then why are we talking about it? But as you look at this acknowledgement, it leads to a second very beautiful and natural part. We ask that if we cannot change it, then what can we change, right? And let's hold on to that thought. I believe history predicts the future. So if you go back, way back to the ancient man, right? When we Neanderthals, they were meandering around the earth, they were hunters, gatherers, they had no control and they were exposed to the vagaries of nature, to the elements, the rain, the sun. Sometimes they would get appraised, sometimes they won't. And this exposure, this fact was accepted by mankind in its early nascent stages. And all they could do, they knew, was to change their reaction. So what did they do? Mankind started building arms to hunt better. They started building dams to get the flow of water when it rained. They started building dwellings and caves so that they could protect themselves from the elements. So, when you cannot change it, whatever that might be, a life event, a tragedy, a trauma, our past deeds, past karma, you cannot change that. But we can certainly change ourselves today through accountability and through a vigorous participation in a journey called life. That's the way I look at
Mm.
acceptance and its sort of impact through life.
I'm still being with the word that you emphasized on, that if you cannot change it, what can you change? So I'm still lingering around with it. And in that moment when you said, if you cannot change it, I experienced as if a part of me got dissociated with me. So
Right,
something that I was holding on to, that, hey, this has happened to me and that's me. And I was experiencing a space of that somebody has amputated my hand
right,
without realizing that the hand has not been amputated. It's a connection in my mind that I was associating with, that I was identifying with. Unless I break that, I'll not be able to experience freedom. So in that moment, Anupam, I experienced freedom.
yeah,
And then you mentioned, if you cannot change it, what can you change? And that's where a sense of ownership came into me.
brilliant,
Now,
brilliant.
I can relate to that. And I would love to dig deeper into some personal losses that both of us have gone through in the recent
Absolutely.
past. And
Absolutely.
it was not a coincidence that Anupam, both of us experienced a very similar loss in a span of around 30 days. So there are some connections that I have always believed that I have some connection with you, and it was just a validation for that. Now, before we dig deeper into that, would love to understand in your corporate career, how has the philosophy that you have lived with supported you?
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, that does acceptance mean that you should not be doing anything to upgrade yourself? But then beautifully, you gave an example of history. You said, because we cannot do anything about the animals and they are going to eat away our children. And that's where there was an invention of arms and weapons and wheel.
So for us, it was a reduction. For them, it was the ability to run their household. Lo and
Mm,
behold, 15 years down the line, you have COVID, and Cvent is an event management organization, which was probably the most impacted along with travel. And you get into
mm,
a similar situation. So, it's
mm,
cyclical, right? You went through big growth, all tech companies, the bubble, as we called it, the mega trends in the big tech world shakers and movers, came COVID.
mm,
And again, similar situation of leadership, similar dilemma. What do we do? And it started, as you would remember, in India in February and March. And we were one of the first organizations in Gurgaon to say we cannot risk the same philosophy, same helplessness to the external force. And you
mm,
know what a giant force it was. From even in a country like ours, there were empty roads. Animals were out, wild animals were out. Human memory is short because we tend to, and I'll talk about that. We tend to put these in our subconscious. But let's
mm,
remember those days, right? Today it's hard to believe because we're back cyclical. But we took that call when we had never ever worked from home, and Cvent
mm,
was a 2,000 people organization. So to take a risk and to figure out how we're going to do it, that is your karma. You focus on that. Could it have backfired? Yes, because most of the companies had not done it. We were on the first, right? But that is what you focus on when you put all your energy in that karma, not so worried about the outcome, right? And that comes with experience, that comes with the process of acceptance, that comes with the process of what I called a few simple facts that you anchor your life on, anchor statements. One of them to me is to focus on the karma and not the outcome. You learn and
mm,
they get validated, and you just make it your second habit. And
mm.
then, as luck would have it, or whatever you want to call it, success has a habit of following this kind of a simple process.
Thank you for bringing that. What I just picked up here is the two examples that you shared, whether the recession of 2008 or the pandemic that we all experienced in the year 2020, there's something which is common. And what I'm picking up right now is, for as long as you're not taking yourself seriously, there's nothing called failure, because anyways you are focusing on your karma and you're not associating yourself with the identity that it's me who's making this happen, right? I've already shared this story with you several times, Anupam. The lesson that I've learned from my mother, where she says, okay, at any point in time, I should not feel that this curd is becoming curd because of my efforts. It's happening through me. And that's the reason she always shares shukrana, shukrana, and shukrana. What I'm also picking up, you also use the word ego. The moment I start to feel that it's happening because of me, that's where the ego is going to show its ugly face to me. Pardon me for my language, it's not ugly,
No, that's
it's
absolutely
showing to
fine.
face its face, right?
Yeah.
It's showing to show her face to me, and that's where I'll start to associate a situation as a failure. Now, just taking one step forward here, pandemic has, especially talking about the pandemic because that's really recent and it has shown all sorts of colors and shapes and forms. Different people responded and reacted to that in a different ways. As you are saying that during the pandemic, you ensured that the senior leadership team get the salary cuts so that the other team members can get their salaries in time. Now, just after pandemic, in the last 6 months' time, I've realized, in the last 6 to 8 months' time, I've realized there's several people in my organization, they have left. And one of those reasons, one of the threads that I've been able to see is the salary hikes. In my mind, I'm wondering, was it a mistake to take care of the entire team members for the last 2 years when the business was not there? Uh, there was no income, and we ensured that we stay uh, loyal to our team members. I hate to use the word employees in my company, right? So that's the reason I'm saying team members. And when you're left with that situation where people are hopping from one job to another one, for a salary hike of 10%, 20%, 30%. And that leaves a founder, a leader, a business engine, the person who's leading that team, with a sense of hurt. And why am I bringing that? Because these are the three elements that we are going to dabble into: the failures, the grief, and the hurt. And I'll come back to grief in a while. So, what's your take on that? How to handle that part of it? And where does ego play a role in when
Yeah.
you feel hurt?
Yeah, again, a wonderful question as always, Gaurav. Here's the point: that leader, that founder, the person at some point in time starts believing, while you may call them team members or colleagues or employees, that he or she owns it. He or she, like I said in my early journey in Ventura, when I had the first 500 people and I was being featured as one of the young CEOs, I thought I've done everything to deserve this success. I'm the one, I'm the driver. It's back to the ego, right? When the ego comes in, hurt will naturally follow. By the way, I want to talk about hurt again. It's a very, very powerful sentiment. And I just do think that we are underprepared to deal with it as mankind, especially in the modern generation. But coming back to that leader feeling that these people are leaving, while the leader may rationalize the comp as a reason, first, the individual has multitudes of reasons. We know today there's something called the great resignation, there's something called life situation. People are looking at work life, they're looking at what do they want to do in life. They may be leaving for many reasons. And they may say to you a particular reason, which may not always be, as you know, human beings are, they're like that iceberg, right? What you see on top is 20%, 80% you can't see. Only they can. We are complex beings. So again, it's the same thing. If you believe that they're leaving you, if they believe that I did my karma, the moment you say I did my karma, the ego is back. When you were doing the karma, how did you feel, Gaurav? Or how did I
Absolutely.
feel? We felt really
Yeah.
great because we were not doing it for the employees. We were
Mm,
doing it because that is our value system. That is what gave us emotional satisfaction. That is what
mm,
allows us. So we got to be clear. You
mm,
cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot do the
mm,
right thing and then have a problem if you have a traffic challan. You stop and
mm.
you pay the challan, right? And you learn. And that's evolution, right? That's the way the cookie crumbles. We never should in the first place believe the
Mm,
people who work with us today, because look, nothing, and there's another learning, the second sort of pillar in my life learning: nothing and no one is permanent.
mm,
Nothing or no one is permanent. So that letting go, for all we know, in your teams, in your organizations, when that happens, it is in a way preparing you for the inevitable that's going to happen in life. What happens? This is an easier example to pin the blame on the external and feel hurt that, hey, I did the right thing. This what happens, like we said, and I don't want to mix grief, but what happens when you lose a loved one in life? Right? So many
mm,
of us have lost someone or the other over the past 2 or 3 years. The hurt is the same. But in this case, again, you may find factors: hey, did I do the medical help at the right time? Did I do everything? It's again, a lot of it is centered around I. So that's something
mm,
the journey teaches you. We have to be prepared because we are, as you know, a mere speck of existence.
mm.
Einstein said it best when he said, one of the most sort of celebrated brains, that I'm but a small grain. I'm just playing with a
Spec.
grain, a speck on the on the beach, right, on the sand. So of
Yeah.
knowledge, right? So in an universe so immense, whatever power you want to call it, what role you assign to
Mm,
yourself is where you set yourself for it. Also,
mm,
this modern pressure of social media led ideal lives where only
mm.
happy pictures, everybody is in a state of nirvana, everybody is just having the best lives of their not even described in movies, right?
Yeah.
That prepares us for this, that prepares us for this disaster. Why? Hurt and joy are like light and darkness. One cannot be experienced without the other. And
Mm,
in a civilization as old as ours, we are always prepared. We were, our 2 3 generations ago, they would never celebrate because they would be like, you know what, uh, grief is going to follow. So let me
mm,
remain balanced, right? They were very, very careful about, displaying wealth, displaying people who are very rich. Even today, in some parts of the country, they follow a very simple lifestyle. When you are prepared in your mind that light and darkness, hurt and joy, hurt and grief are going to come in equal measures, then you are equanimous when both of them happen. When you are
mm,
being led by this unrealistic modern pressure, hey, I got to avoid sorrow and hurt at all cost. I should not be true to my emotions. I should not be seen crying. I should be seen as having this amazingly emotionally fulfilled and materialistically successful life. Guess what? You are priming yourself up for a disaster because it's bound
mm,
to follow. It's the part, one of the things you mentioned about
mm,
essence of life, and I'll keep sorry, moving from one to the other, one of the essences of life is, like you said, not to take yourself too seriously. You know,
mm,
our existence on earth is a classroom. It is here to teach us something. And
mm,
every school, every classroom has a playground. And that was the best time of school, if you remember. You never remember what happened in the class, but you remember the fun you had in the playground. And that
mm,
is the lightness with which one has to approach life. And when one does that, one is equally prepared. You used to fall down, get up, dust your uniform, run back into the class happy. You used to get
mm,
punished in class, right? And you would hide it from your parents. So look, ultimately, that preparation, if you know, that's the way I've reminded myself that again, if I have done my karma, to your point about my CEO role, I'm also a blessed father to two daughters. You know, you don't control the outcome. Life teaches you
mm,
that. And as long as then you are back to the fundamental that I felt good doing my karma from my head and my heart, if
mm,
the outcome is hurt, I embrace it. Same surrender,
mm.
same acceptance, because you have to go with the flow. You cannot,
Mm.
you have to be prepared to let go. You know, whether
Yeah.
it's your own child, whether it's a family member or an employee. You know, what's the difference? The process is the same. Nature, every flower turns into a withered flower next morning and is followed by a fruit, and the journey and the life cycle continues. It is
Mm.
just our interpretation, right?
What I'm listening is the few words which are resonating with me right now is the word impermanence.
Sure.
Another thing which is coming to me is the choiceless choices.
Hmm?
Now, interestingly, we are talking about the losses and taking a dive into the grief part of it. At times you ask yourself, why did it happen to me? How do you handle those situations? And you have recently gone through one of those griefs in your life.
I've been fortunate to get inspired to try and get some learning, some essence in life from them. So one of the spiritual masters had you know, sort of a adopted family in the village, and when he was abandoned by everyone when he was young, uh, the mother of the family, she had her own son, adopted him as her son. And long story short, he always treated her as mother. And you know, life moved on. And as the woman aged, she one day in the village, the master was there, but he was somewhere else, and the mom passed away. So her born son came running to the master and said, uh, you know, mom's passed away. You know, people in the village are telling me she's dead. So the master just calmly looked at him, and he got very much infuriated. He said, you always called her mother, and you are a spiritual master, and you know, you have the powers vested in you by the angels, and my mother can die, but how can your mother die? So you must come and make her alive again, right? And the master again smiled at him and said, yes. He obviously went because he treated her as his mother, and he said, yes, I will, in this house where she is in your house, I will perform that miracle and I will bring her back to life. I just have one request. So he said, yes, tell me. He said, in this village there are, you know, 150 houses. Take me to any one house that hasn't lost someone physically. Take me
Mm.
to one house. If you can show me one house, I will make sure that she's back to life. So that sort of story, and I have these little stories in life that have sort of stayed with me in a certain way, stayed with me. And this was much earlier. I heard this very long time back, but much before. Then let's talk about that again, acceptance and linking it back to COVID, which is very contextual for us. And as a professional, my mom never spent much time with us, as most of us. You know, she was a professor in organic chemistry. She was teaching in the university in Allahabad, to which small city I belong. I'm a small town guy, and I was running my corporate career in all different cities across India: Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Coimbatore, Delhi. You know, so it was always like you would go home on Diwali, or they would come for a week, and so on and so forth. As luck would have it, just before COVID started, and this is again where people believe that, oh, everything is a plan, everything is a coincidence. You know, I want to tell you that that acceptance that leads to that belief and that surrender, how that works, and then you might take it as a nothing short of a miracle in my story.
Mm.
My elder daughter, their elder grandchild, is studying in the University of Waterloo in Canada, and she was coming to India to do an internship. She came in December, and my parents said, we're going to come and spend some time with her. So they came to Delhi. And after that, the pandemic broke out, right? And then from 2019 or 2020 January till 2022 March, they stayed with us. And my daughter couldn't go back, so she stayed with us. for 7 months in a third year
mm,
of college, which, she would have been gone in any other scene, would never have come for more than a week. She stayed for 7 months to do her internship and then remote login. And we all spent that quality time for which I'm eternally grateful, which was not my entitlement.
mm,
The price to pay for a successful corporate career where you are constantly getting transferred, constantly moving and addressing these, sort of, success factors comes at a cost, right? And then that cost normally would have been that, if she had gone without my getting that opportunity and have COVID to thank,
mm,
though maybe it was COVID that took her away, who knows? But that's the same. If you club the two messages, that is there a household that hasn't lost a mother? And am I blessed that I got to spend that quality time? Because guess what? It was COVID. We were eating meals together. I was working from home. We were cleaning the house together. There were no maids. In those two lives, in those 2 years, I lived a happiness of a lifetime. So
mm,
those are some of the things, and I don't know if others can relate to it, Gaurav, but maybe you can, because I know your mom lived with you, and I know the story there. But that's the way I sort of dealt with that grief and hurt. And again, it's the biggest barrier to acceptance from that lens is letting go.
mm,
And that was my point, that letting go process is the life has its own teachers, right? However much we
mm.
might go through these theoretical discussions, it doesn't register till it happens. But when it
Yeah.
happens, that's why I said life is a classroom, right? Our presence on earth is a classroom. All these life
Mm,
events come to teach us, and you hurt, you grieve. But as Rumi said, light enters from where you are broken.
mm,
And I feel very blessed, and as always, have immense gratitude for what was. And just to finish, when my grandfather passed away, my father and I, and we as a family, we were in South America in 1980. My dad is an economist, and he got an assignment, and we were in a country called Suriname, which was on the other side of the map in India. In 1980, there were no phones, there was nothing. When my father lost his father, we had been outside India for 2 years. He's the eldest. He was very attached to him. And there was nothing that he could do, even in terms of, there was no technology. There was no way he could come back in time for a flight. Uh, he came back home after 12 to 18 months of his father passing away. So, right out there, you have enough reasons to have gratitude. Should
mm.
you choose acceptance and surrender? And should
Yeah.
you choose uh, some of those barriers, which we spoke about, fear, hurt, guilt, grief, and not go through that process, um you know you can be broken.
Yeah. 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 And those are some seminal moments in our lives. And especially Anupam, when you spoke about let go, I was wondering what is it that I need to let go of? And when you go through this life changing, life transforming situations in your life, what happens? For me, in a spur of a moment, the fear of losing someone moved out of my life. And
Absolutely.
that's what I shared. Neither before nor after that have I actually experienced any kind of fear. It was only during that phase when I would get a call from my brother and I would say, Bhaiya, Bhai Sab calling. And the first 3 seconds is going to determine what I would be, what space I would be holding for the further conversation. And if the sound from the other end is calm, everything is taken care of. And Gaurav, and I would just sit at the edge of the chair. You know, let me just go back 4 months back. And if you would have said the same things to me, I said, I do understand that, what you're saying. At the cognitive level, I do understand that. And incidentally, so many people on this call may not have, by God's grace, may never have experienced what we are talking about right now. So we do understand that. What kind of practices should we have to imbibe in a sense of impermanence in life, a sense of equanimity in life that might help us to get prepared for those life changing, life transforming moments? That's one. Second, because I think that these moments make you more humane. So, what do you think? What kind of practices that one can imbibe in?
If I say it, it might sound a little cheesy, but it's very important to have someone in life who can be your sounding board, who can be your anchor, because the best of us in these moments get rocked, right? Your life just gets shattered. Whoever imagines losing a loved one, who has built that scenario? Okay. So it's very important to have someone in life. Now that could be anyone. It could be a coach. It could be a partner. It could be someone that is your mentor, that you go to, someone you trust, your elder brother. It is not driven by relationship. It is driven by your comfort and your ability to see them as people who can be that anchor. It's determined by characteristic. It could be your kid, for all you know, right? But you need to have someone in life, right?
Somebody who can hold that space for you.
Exactly. Someone who can hold it. That's very well put, because that's what you need at that moment. There's so many people, they're calling you, they're giving you advice, they're telling you, like in my mom's case, we were in Allahabad, very close to home. My whole organization, my whole leadership team was like, you got to get her to Medanta. You're being stupid. Get into the air ambulance. And we were 1 kilometer away from our ancestral house in Allahabad. And my mom's words to me always were, and look at it, destiny. And if you believe in, again, I said, I believe that there are no coincidences. I went and dropped them to Allahabad about 3 weeks before she passed away, because she wanted to renovate the house. And she had been there with me here in Gurgaon for 3 years. She's like, look, the house is falling apart. We need to go and do it. And that took her back to Allahabad. If I had in her lifetime asked her, because, and coincidentally, you'll be amazed, we actually had this discussion. And we're talking about death. We lost a near one in family, and I want to talk about death because I think that's another topic I want to share. Since you have gone into that deep space, I do want to share some thoughts, and I hope it'll help, and maybe I'll get to learn something from the questions as well, because it's still a journey. I can't say that it's done, but I had that conversation with her, about death, and I'll tell you the story that I shared with her at that point in time. But if I had asked her, or if I asked you or myself, hey, there's going to be a moment where we're going to be leaving Earth, right? What is it? And that's something we never ever want to plan for. We never ever, especially in our world, in this modern world, want to write a will. We never ever want to mention how should our last hours be. My mom was very clear. She told me as and when, her words in Hindi were, मैं चलते फिरते जाना चाहती हूँ. I want to leave the face of earth on my feet if possible. I don't want to be on a hospital bed. I don't want to be on a ventilator. When my time comes, I've lived my life. I'd like to leave it with grace, and I don't want to leave it in the ways that. And she wanted to be in Allahabad. She spent her whole life in Allahabad. She taught there. So if I look at it from her perspective, and again, if I take away the ego of being a CEO son, of being a whatever, with all the means at my life, and all those means are of no use when the time comes. You got to be prepared for the final journey. From her perspective, so could she have asked for anything else? No. The reality of the matter is it's a painful memory, but we learn to, like I said earlier, be equanimous in that hurt. You know, in a week she had completely recovered almost, but the disease was such that her recovery period after that would have taken a lot of years. She would be bedridden, her some cognitive abilities would have been impacted, but physically she had recovered. So to the point that I called my global CEO and said, I'm going to be working from Monday. And when Monday, every morning I used to go there at 9:30 a.m. to give her the coconut water and whatever liquid feed. And I went in there, long story short, and it was almost as if she was waiting. On the Friday before, they celebrated their 51st marriage anniversary. On the Sunday, everything on the tests looked great. On the Monday, when I went there at 9:30 a.m., everything was fine, right? And I normally would go and tilt her up so that they could be given the. When I did that, she took two short breaths, and right there in my arms, I could see the soul depart. It is the prerogative of the soul. The relationships we have are all driven by body. I don't want to get too deep in philosophy, but when you experience something like that, it's the same feeling I had when I held my newborn daughter when she was born in my hands. I was like, wow, they're really small. I still remember it was in a green towel, government hospital kind of a towel. So
Mm.
it was the same feeling of life coming in, of life passing, right? The preparedness is nothing additional, Gaurav. The preparedness is when those life events are happening, how are we internally reacting to them? Because in one, we want that happiness to be there forever. The same daughter, when she was 17 years old, and not even a major, I had to board a flight from here all the way to Canada to drop her because she was very clear she wants to study outside India. And on a
Mm.
lighter note, the first call I got after about when once she had settled down and all was that Canada has legalized cannabis. That was the first call my daughter called. She didn't tell me about how her academics was going, what grades she was getting. It was, Dad, did you read the news? I was like, no, what is it? Well, Canada has legalized cannabis.
Mm.
Imagine being a father of a 17 and year 9-month old daughter who's saying, well, it's going to be freely available here. And then she was laughing away to glory.
Mm.
These moments teach you you don't control anything. All you control is your karma as a father. Whatever values you had to give, you have given. The bird will leave the nest. It is something that we have artificially built around us, and we need to bring those walls down to allow acceptance to come in. Acceptance is a natural process.
You mentioned something so beautiful. You said we have created all these artificial walls around us. For the sake of what?
Because
Hmm.
it gives you such a high when somebody tells me, oh, your daughter is studying in University of Waterloo. Wow. You
Hmm.
know, I'm like, well, it's nothing to do with me. I'm a caretaker. It's her journey, it's her life. She got the grades, she made the cut. As a
Hmm.
father, I did my do. Now, again, the same event I have had. I'm not judging myself and saying I'm great. I've seen a lot of parents today, and some of us might be on call, young parents, derive their sense of existence from how quickly their child speaks, how many different activities a child does. Let's be clear, we don't own our children.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah. Yeah.
caretakers. We're going to leave them just as my mom left me to deal with my journey, right? Of course,
Hmm.
they'll contribute there. It is just the ego that
Hmm.
creates all of this. And all the things we spoke about, letting
Hmm.
go. What prevents letting go? The ego.
Yeah, as you said, threatened, right? A sense of insecurity, a sense of safety, right? A sense of, if I don't have this, who am I instead? If I don't have my child sitting and studying in Canada, who am I? If my child is not speaking and she has not learned how to color, who am I? If I don't have this or that, the designations and accomplishments, who am I? And that's the reason when I was talking to you, I genuinely wanted to get deeper into who Anupam is. So, Anupam, the question that I'm asking people is, what is the true essence of life? I'll come back to this question in a while. However, what we are talking about is life beyond life. And I'm not even using the word death, because what I've realized is whatever we call death is where a person transit from the world we call this three-dimensional world, transit from one world to another world, and nobody has actually informed us what happens in that world. What is the true essence of death for you?
Yeah, what a great question, Gaurav. Let me try and I'm going to take a little longer to just answer because these are very deep questions. And again, by no means am I an authority on any of these. I'm just as much as a sharing soul as all of us who are listening or as you are asking the questions. Look, death is a topic that if ever I had to do something in life after, I want to explore it. I want to write it. I want to talk about it, right? And there's a little story I want to tell you, and this is a story that my mom and I discussed when we were talking, right? But before that, let's be clear, whatever the barriers you spoke about, fear, guilt, hurt, these are all very primal emotions with negative connotations, very primal. The human psyche of pursuit of happiness pushes these down in our subconsciousness. Like if I even right now ask myself, what were the various activities, even though it's just fresh 3 months, it's already been put down buried in my subconsciousness, right? The opposite of acceptance is denial, right? And that's another reason why when you said it's ego, and it's also how socially and how we are conditioned to live in denial, right? And we have to break through that conditioning, which is why you need help, you need support. It is not a natural process. Natural process is to do what society says and does, which is build denial so that you can be artificially in that walled reality you've created in this artificial happiness. So
So,
let
so
me just,
would you call
yeah,
so
go ahead.
would you call it a natural process, or would you call it a strategy to feel accepted in the society that we have given a lot of importance to?
Conformance, exactly, conformance. If you
Hmm.
look at all the spiritual masters, if you look at all the people that are philosophers, society never accepted them. Society, crucified them. And Socrates, I just want to talk about, is one of my favorites. But here is the point: the biggest fear for mankind is death. There is no
Hmm.
fear bigger than death because you don't know when it will come. But it is the only reality. It's the only truth. It is a taboo to talk about death. Anybody on this call, on the next party, when you go, just start saying, hey, you know what? I want to talk about death. Just see how quickly the crowd disperses and people are like, get him or her a drink. How morbid, right? So we've, as a social process, if you look at the process of when somebody passes over, to your point, in the other dimension, it is a process that makes it a quickly buried event, pun intended. We're just quick about it. Let's just move on. And that it's fair because on one side we talk about letting go, and that's a natural process. But if that doesn't happen with acceptance, if it doesn't happen with that awareness that this is nature, this is reality, your point of being natural, that comes from nature,
mm,
then that moving on is without healing. It is superficial. It will not lead to closure. It will damage the psyche of a person for a
mm,
very long period of time. And the
mm,
kind of side
mm,
effects
mm,
that has, it's not worth it. So we must spend time healing through that process. And again, in the
mm,
West, there's a lot more work that has been done as compared to us. We have not equipped our next generation, the current generation, to deal with this. We just haven't,
mm,
right? And
mm,
that's the worry. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because Socrates, as some of us may know, ahead of his times, came out of the philosophy. The town council said, leave the philosophy, and that's again going back to the essence of life and life purpose. That was his life
mm,
purpose at that time. Or drink a cup of poison.
mm,
Leave your philosophy because you're spoiling the youth. Or,
mm,
and there were many others like Galileo, all of them, right?
mm,
Or drink a cup of poison. Obviously, Socrates said, I'll take the poison. Now, the jailer who was supposed to administer the poison was very fond of Socrates. He thought whatever Socrates said was making a lot of sense. So every time
mm,
that date for giving that cup of poison came, he deferred it for some reason or the other. And Socrates got to know of it. So one day Socrates said, I want to talk to this jailer. The jailer came and Socrates was very upset with him. And the jailer was like, but I, I thought I'm being good to you. He said, no, you are delaying my journey. Give me the cup. I'm ready to move to better. And the jailer was shocked.
mm,
So awareness, what life is, what life's purpose is, some people get it, some people are way ahead on the journey, but
mm,
it is still universal. The impact
mm,
of it is universal. The need for it is universal. And that awareness that somebody like Socrates had, or some of these great philosophers had, leading to that acceptance that it is transitionary, I want to move to something better, right?
mm.
Cup of
Yeah,
poison. And
yeah,
also not giving up on life purpose. So you keep asking about what is the essence of life. It is to live your purpose. And if you're not loyal to a purpose, then is it truly life? Because look at some of these examples. Look at your freedom fighters. Chandrasekhar Azad
mm,
shot himself in the brain, then
yeah,
surrendered. His life purpose was, I will never be captured again by the British. I want to establish that lack of fear that you said. And the moment somebody like Socrates made that connection of awareness and acceptance, there was no fear of death. And to your
mm.
point, if there's no fear of death,
Then
hardly
is
anything
life.
else. You're going to be fearful of recession, interest rate,
Mm,
what job, what, all
mm,
pale in insignificance, right?
mm,
So
mm.
this is the real taboo in our
Yeah,
society, and I do want us to talk openly about it. And look at how many
mm,
books have been written about death. Everybody talks about how can you live a more fulfilling life, how can you
mm,
live win friends, influence. Nobody says how can you
yeah,
prepare for dying.
mm,
I don't want to make it morbid, but look, it's from the heart, right? And it's everybody's reality. And COVID has brought it home.
mm,
COVID has brought it home very hard, right?
yeah. Thank you. It reminds me of one of the statements that I often share in my programs is you have to kill a part of your own self to give birth to a new self. And having just heard you, what is coming to me is that you have to release yourself to give birth to another self with capital S. And what is that capital S? I have to define for myself, be it merging into my life or merging into so called life beyond life. Just one last question. I'll just keep it very, very brief. Anupam, thank you for sharing your insights and your reflections. If that is what the essence of death is, to release the fear and to embrace a life beyond life, whether the examples of the martyrs that you have shared or the Socrates that you have shared, what is the true essence of life for you?
Yeah, it is. I'll be very brief in the answer. It is living the moment. If right now I'm with you here, this is life.
Mm,
If you are fortunate to live many years, it should be a collection of many such moments that you
mm,
can look back and say that you have had a fulfilled life. They say, I had a life changing moment. I've read this very often. It was a life changing moment. So the moment does have a power to change your life. Why are we not finding those moments? And if we just have enough of those moments, aren't we living a fulfilled and blessed existence?
mm,
So, can you find a moment that can encompass your life? And then you will
mm,
stop looking for the meaning of life. That's been my experience. And I love the word acceptance. I said to you, I just want to, before I hand it over for any other questions, just say, look, In our mythology, there's something called Sudarshan Chakra, right? So Vishnu has this, right, mythological figure, and acceptance is that Sudarshan Chakra. You spoke about cutting the bondage, you spoke about cutting yourself free. It is
Mm,
that Sudarshan Chakra of positivity. When it
mm,
gets released, and when we also learn, because we've spoken about a lot of negative stuff, I don't want to leave the audience with that thought. When you also link the acceptance of positivity, the acknowledgement of all good that is happening, the
mm,
fortune of the fact that you and I were spared when many others weren't, and that we are here alive and breathing, having this conversation, when we open our hearts to that, we experience gratitude and shukran. So
mm,
I do want to leave, and it's something that I'd read, and it's not my original concept, but maybe accept what we cannot change, and maybe have the courage to change what we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's what I'd
mm.
sign off with.
Thank you so much for sharing, Anupam. I would not dilute the taste that you're leaving us with. Shukran, shukran, shukran.